Oh shit, I forgot to hit record. Yeah, so we got this boy Lex right on the screen making this eyes closed about to give some cringe takes on Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem. So let's see how this goes.
I don't know if
oh
you're familiar
shit.
with Gödel's
I gotta switch my audio real quick. Headphones. Do you guys hear anything? Let's see if this works. Let me know if you guys can hear him.
Incompleteness Theorem.
Oh shit,
I'm not.
that's right in my ears.
I don't know if you're familiar with Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem.
I'm not.
Gale's Incompleteness Theorem. Why did he say it like that? What the fuck? I thought my pronunciation was bad. I was saying like Gödel or Gödel or whatever the fuck I'm saying. I don't even know, bro. Jesus. I hate doing... I love these Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem segments because, like, mathematical philosophy, that's my shit. Like, math, philosophy, I fucking love them both, you know? Mix them together, you got... What more could we possibly be asking for? But, I don't know, man. The whole Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem thing is a bit difficult because I can't even fucking pronounce the dude's name.
Not, unfortunately.
Okay. It was a powerful proof that any axiomatic systems, when you start from a bunch of axioms, that there will, in that system, provably must be an inconsistency. So that was this pain.
All right, so right away, we have a little bit of cringe going on here. Right away, we have this this idea that Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem proved that any axiomatic system is going to have some inconsistency, which is not true. That's a mischaracterization of the system. What Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem actually says is that any consistent system, any logical system, any logical system with consistent axioms will necessarily be incomplete. It won't be able to prove all truth. There will be some truths that it can't necessarily prove within that system, which... I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem super unreasonable. This doesn't seem like something that's super fucking revolutionary. Like, oh yeah, you can't prove everything from a finite set of axioms. Sure, that makes sense. What are axioms anyways? Axioms are things that we basically assume are reasonable in mathematics based off of some inductive steps that we've taken. Because before you can do any sort of deduction, you have to do some induction first. Induction in this sense being the philosophical, logical term for induction rather than the like concept of mathematical induction, which is kind of a deductive sort of method anyways. But I guess that there are certain parallels between induction and deduction, which I could, or between mathematical induction and like philosophical induction that I could get into. But I don't know if you guys know enough about those yet. I could probably get into them later in the video because I think we're going to talk a little bit about induction and deduction later on.
Painful like stab in the idea of mathematics that no, if we start with a set of assumptions, kind of like Ayn Rand started with objectivism, there will have to be at least one contradiction.
See, I intuitively
see. He's mischaracterizing it here. That's a big problem here. So I think a lot of people think this way about Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem, which is why I sort of want to talk about it like this, because people like to think of this as this like completely crazy theorem that shows that like things are inconsistent and like, oh, we can't really have any knowledge. This is like a skeptic's dream, basically. This is like a skeptic's wet dream, basically. Like, oh my God, there must be some inconsistency in any system that you can come up with. Well, not really. That's not necessarily what he's saying. What it's saying. It says that for any system of like a finite number of axioms, basically. And also, if I'm mischaracterizing Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem, please correct me. But I feel like this is something I have a decent understanding of. But it says basically for any system with a like finite number of axioms, you can't have a fully complete system, something that will be able to prove with any statement within that system. I guess you can't necessarily prove any system with deductively through logic from that through that system. which I don't think is that crazy. I mean, we don't necessarily think that it'll necessarily be complete. Now, I think inconsistency is a problem, because inconsistency, contradictions, those are problematic. That means that you have to revise your system. You have to update your system. You have to update your axioms to create a system that actually is consistent. And I think that's actually partially, like, if you look into Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory. I'll just Wikipedia that. Yeah. So this is like the modern form of set theory that we use, and nobody has really found many contradictions with this yet. Or I don't know too much about it, but we haven't found any contradictions in it yet. Before, we had the general theory of like naive set theory, and that was sort of the foundation of mathematics, which ultimately, like Russell's paradox ultimately ended up debunking that, and then we replaced it with this, basically, which became a different sort of axiomatic system that we now use to prove theorems in mathematics. But what Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem basically said is that even this system, even a consistent system, even a system that doesn't have contradictory axioms, that the axioms don't lead to contradictions, will be incomplete. But it's not saying that any system whatsoever will necessarily have some contradiction in it. Any system of axioms, that's absurd. That's not true. If your system has some contradiction, you have to revise your axioms. And also his paralleling this with Ayn Rand to sort of get this like gotcha of like, oh yeah, any system that includes objectivism must have some contradiction. That's just like a cheap gotcha, and from a misunderstanding of Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem, plus you're applying it to an explicitly inductive system. It's not like you start with axioms and then deduce from there. That's not how Rand presents her philosophy, and I don't think that's how philosophy should be done either. You have attempts to do that with people like Pascal and people like, or not Pascal, Spinoza with his ethics, which was very like mathematical in its form, but that's not. I would argue that's not necessarily the best way to do philosophy, but we can get into that too a little later, because they're going to be talking a little bit more about that as well.
I'm going to say that's false.
Philosophically, but in math, it's just true. And
it's a question about how you define, again, the definitions matter, and you have to be careful on how you define axioms. And you have to be careful about what you define as an inconsistency and what that means to say there's an inconsistency. And I don't know. I'm not going to say more than that because I don't know. But I'm suspicious.
I think this was a really good answer from Yaron here. I don't have many problems with that. He's not a mathematician. He doesn't necessarily know all the all the mathematical theory behind this. He doesn't necessarily understand Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem. He said he didn't know what it was either. But this initial response of we got to understand what we mean by axioms, understand what we mean by inconsistency, and all these sort of things, and be straight with be clear with our definitions, which I don't think Gödel was very clear in his explanation of his theorem. Also, just judging by the way that it's largely interpreted. Especially in this video. This clip, I guess it's like a 3-hour video. This is just an example of, an obvious example of somebody misinterpreting the incompleteness theorem and just applying it in absurd ways, frankly. But yeah, let's keep going. But yeah, I thought Yaron's answer was good here. Yeah, leave it to the mathematicians. Leave it to the mathematicians like me. Fuck yeah, I'm a fucking genius.
That there is some, and this is the power of philosophy, and this is why I said before, concept formation is so important, and understanding concept formation is so important for particularly again mathematics, because it's such an abstract field, and it's so easy to lose grounding in reality. That if you properly define axioms and you properly define what you're doing in math, whether that is true. And I don't think it is.
This is we'll leave it as an open.
Absolutely. I think that's a good answer. We need to be smarter about how we do our mathematics. I don't necessarily think that modern mathematics is that fucking corrupt. I think a lot of objectivists have that impression, but I don't know if that's necessarily super true. I think there is a huge emphasis on deduction and this sort of idea that our axioms are arbitrary that I don't really like. But other than that, I mean, the logic of mathematics is absolutely beautiful, and even like modern views of math is, I mean, we have so many tools to gain new knowledge in mathematics now. We have such a like great understanding of logic, I guess, and comparing that with using that in mathematics, that it's just, yeah, I think modern mathematics isn't that fucking terrible as a lot of people think it is.
Open mystery, because actually this audience, you know, there's literally over 100,000 people that have PhDs, and so they know Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem. I have this intuition that there's something different between mathematics and philosophy that I'd love to hear from people. Like, what exactly is that difference? Because there's a precision to mathematics that philosophy doesn't have, but that precision gets you in trouble. It actually takes you away from truth. Like the very.
I think I kind of know what he's getting at here. I mean, I think the standard answer that I've heard, like from, I mean, talking about this in OAC with a few people, like some of the intellectuals, like there, when we talked about like deductive systems and inductive systems and that sort of thing, like that seems to be the difference. Like math is a deductive system. Math starts from certain axioms and deduces all its theorems, all its proofs from those axioms. Philosophy doesn't do that. You don't do that in philosophy. You start with certain like axioms and take them as almost like, trying to think how to formulate this properly. Almost as like something that you like can't contradict later on. But from there, you like go out and discover the world. You go out and look at things. You go out and look at existence. You don't start from like, oh, existence exists. A is A. Now we're going to create a deductive proof that proves that selfishness is a virtue. Like you can't really do that. You have to go out and observe certain things. Like Rand, for example, explained that she observed the Industrial Revolution. She observed how man's mind, how reason actually does lead to like these great advancements, and how people acting in their rational self-interest brings them happiness. And like going out and observing those things and taking these inductive steps will ultimately lead you to philosophical truth. And you need some sort of mathematical philosophy before you can, some sort of like induction in mathematics before you can do like what most people would consider mathematics, this deductive system of like you start with, P is a prime number, and then blah, 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 therefore, or P is a prime number, and P divides B times C. Therefore, blah, 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 therefore, P divides B, or P divides C. That's one particular mathematical theorem. But before that, you need some concept of like, what is a prime number? What is a number? And like just going down to these fundamental levels that you need to take these inductive steps. Like you need to go out and observe certain things. You need to go out and observe that, these pencils exist in a certain quantity. There's one pencil here, one pencil here. Well, now when they're together, this is a different sort of thing than just this. Like there's two things here, and observing them as units. And there's all that sort of development of coming up with like what a number is, coming up with definitions of things, coming up with axioms as well. Like one axiom that we talk about a lot in my it's the only axiom that we've really covered so far in my modern algebra class right now is the well-ordering axiom, which is basically just the idea that any set of positive integers, being like any integer like 1, 2, 3, 4, any of those numbers, it'll have a smallest element. Well, I mean, that makes sense. You can go out and observe that. But I guess an issue with a lot of times when I like listen to this, I'm like, well, this is true. Like you're saying that we're just assuming this to be true, but this is something that's true. This is something that we directly observe in reality. So like the whole idea of that, like math is a deductive system, and we start from these arbitrary axioms. I don't think the axioms are arbitrary. And I guess when I'm talking about, I guess I can go deeper and explain what arbitrary is. I mean, arbitrary is just something that an assertion without any evidence. Well, we do have evidence of our axioms. The well-ordering axiom, we can see that Like there is a smallest number in any group of numbers that we have, if they're positive integers. I mean, if you include negative integers, there's not necessarily a smallest, because you can go negative for as long as you want. Although, I guess in reality, though, like when you're actually doing it, there will probably be a smallest number, or there will always be one, because infinity's only potentiality.
Very constraints of the language used in mathematics actually puts a constraint on the capture of truth that it's able to do.
So I'm going to argue that is a total product of the way you're conceptualizing the terms within mathematics. It's not in reality.
Yes, so you would argue it's in the fact that mathematics, in as much as it's detached from reality, that you can do these kinds of things.
Yes, and that mathematicians have come up with concepts that they haven't grounded in reality properly, that allows them to go off on in places that don't lead to truth. That's right, that don't lead to truth. But I encourage you to
I think I don't know if I'm comfortable agreeing with that particular thing Yaron says, because I think mathematicians do try to be very careful in defining the things that they're arguing for. I do agree that a lot of people can use, so I guess I do kind of agree with them. I do agree that a lot of like mathematicians, they can, not necessarily the mathematician themselves, but I think a lot of like the public can hear a certain mathematical fact that like a mathematician came up with and completely misinterpret what it means, completely misinterpret like the context that it's in, completely misinterpret what they're actually saying here. Like one obvious example of this is like the number file video of like 1 + 2 + 3 plus blah 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 all the way to infinity equals -1/12. There is a way mathematically that concept makes sense in the context of like the Riemann zeta function and analytic continuation. But that actual sum, when you're actually just thinking about it in terms of like the sum of all the integers, that doesn't equal -1/12. That's absurd. And any reasonable mathematician will tell you that, like any actual mathematician will tell you that no, like the sum of all integers is not, I mean, the sum of all integers diverges. It doesn't end up equaling anything. It's just infinite. Like you can keep adding on another integer continuously forever. Which is one property of infinity that's really interesting, because the whole concept of just this ability to open-endedly continue a process. So like you can continue adding on an integer that's one higher. So like no matter how high you go, no matter how many integers you add on, you can always add on one more that's one higher. That's all that the idea of like adding an infinite number of integers means. But yeah, let's keep going.
To do one of these podcasts with one of our philosophers who know more about this stuff. And if you move to Austin, I've got somebody I'd recommend to you. And
can you throw a name out or no?
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to Greg Salmieri.
When we say our, can you say what you mean by our?
I'd say people who are affiliated with the Eidman Institute, or philosophers who are affiliated with objectivism, right? And Greg is one of our brothers.
Absolutely. All those AI intellectuals, those guys are very intelligent people, and I've learned a shit ton from them about like ways to conceptualize a lot of these issues. Not necessarily directly from them. I think a lot of this has been a lot of my own integrations from thinking about math, reading or listening to Pat Corvini's lecture on mathematics and infinity, and reading a little bit of Robert E. Knapp's book, but also a lot of it is just my own thinking and a lot of my own sort of integrations from getting an mathematical education, since that's my second major right now is mathematics. So just observing things from stuff that I'm learning, observing things from like watching YouTube videos about math, because I mean, like I fucking love math.
And he's in Austin. He's just got a position at UT, so at the University of Texas. And he would one, Onkar Gate would be another one who actually works at the Institute and a chief philosophy officer at the Institute.
That's awesome.
And
I love Onkar. I've talked with Onkar a few times in office hours, and like every single time that I've talked to him, he's offered me something that I haven't thought of before. Like that just like completely changes my way of thinking about an issue. I mean, one such thing was the the idea of like the prime mover, for example, or the first mover, the prime mover. Just thinking about like what is motion, what is time, all that sort of stuff. What is it, like the relativity of motion, and like he just presented an integration there that I thought was amazing. So yeah, Onkar, I can't speak highly enough of him. What a genius fucking philosopher.
And there are others who specialize in philosophy of science who I think Greg could probably give you a lead. But these are unbelievably smart people who know this part of the philosophy much better than I do.
What can you just briefly perhaps say, what is the Ayn Rand Institute?
Yeah, so the Ayn Rand Institute was an organization founded 3 years after Ayn Rand.
It looks like they're getting done with that. It says there's a little bit of time left for the Gödel Incompleteness Theorem, so I'll keep listening, but yeah.
She died in 1982. And it was founded in 1985 to promote her ideas, to make sure that her ideas and her novels continued in the culture and were relevant. Well, they're relevant, but the people saw the relevance. So our mission is to get people to read her books, to engage in the ideas. We teach. We have the Objectivist Academic Center where we teach the philosophy.
Fuck yeah, I'm in that right now.
But primarily to graduate students and others who take the ideas seriously and who really want a deep understanding of the philosophy. And we apply the ideas. So we take the ideas and apply them to ethics, to philosophy, to issues of the day, which is more my strength and more what I tend to do. I've never formally studied philosophy, so all my education in philosophy is informal. And I'm an engineer and a finance guy. That's my background. So I'm a numbers guy.
Well, let me.
Yeah, I feel like that's ultimately gonna kind of be what I am. I mean, I do learn a lot about math. I learn a lot about like. I mean, I'm gonna know a shit ton about finance too. Shit, I'm gonna be just like Yaron someday, guys. No, but yeah. Let's see if that's it.
I feel pretty under-educated. I have a pretty open mind,
Capitalism,
which sometimes can be painful.
Oh, yep, that is it. Sweet, so we made it through that video. Hell yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, for those watching when I post this on YouTube, see you later. Be sure to tune into the next stream. We got 4 viewers right now, and I'd prefer to have some, like, chat conversation, you know? But it is what it is. And cut.